Welcome back to the Cranmer Fellows podcast. I'm Jonathan Groves. I'm the assistant rector at Church of the Good Shepherd in Binghamton, New York. And as always, I'm here with Matt Kennedy, rector of Church of the Good Shepherd, and the canon for preaching in the Anglican Diocese of the Living Word. And today we're going to walk through Matthew chapter 16, verses 13 through 20. That's the text where Jesus makes Peter the rock and the first pope of the church, and gives Rome jurisdiction over the entire church. Or maybe I'm mistaken about that. Matt can straighten us out. Matt, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm well. I'm doing all right. I was thinking about our episode last week where we talked, or the last 2 weeks when we were talking about false teachers. And I just thought, man, I'm going to give or ask you about the Mike Winger videos that were coming out. Did you watch those yet?
I watched all the Michael Bowles,
Oh yeah, the Sean Bowles.
Charles Bowles. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's what it is.
Mi-
I'm just now into the guy with the dreadlocks.
Todd
What's his
White.
name?
Todd.
Todd White. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was incredible. Right? It's easy. It's interesting how bad theology plays into this. I mean, it's already bad behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Terrible behavior on both these men's parts, but the theology of the prophet, the theology of the Lord's anointed, is it's and the theology of you know I get a sense that they're like these figures. I'm not sure. This is more your context than mine. I get a sense that these figures are like kind of so holy that people are afraid to touch them. Is that is that kind of what it's like?
Oh yeah, definitely.
I
Well,
mean,
and Mike, he brings it out in the Todd White video. You listen to some of Todd White's, some, like, all of his sermons are about how he's following the way of Jesus. Like, I mean, uh, it didn't hit me when I was younger and in my church, and we would listen to Todd White. It didn't hit me that no one taught me that he's, peddling Neo-Pelagianism, where you can become perfect. You can be completely
yeah,
sanctified
I listened to him
by
say, "I haven't
eternity.
lied for 20 years" or something like that. I haven't told a
Yeah,
lie.
well, ever since he was converted, he hasn't lied. He wakes up free and no condemnation ever. And so and that's not because he doesn't say that's because of what Christ has done. It's because he's living in freedom from actual sin. Like, he's not sinning. So, so
Wow.
yeah. So yeah, then it follows that he would be a wicked man in the pulpit, he's a wicked man in private. So it just follows. And but yeah, for
How
anyone,
would you like to be on the staff of someone like that? How would you like to be like serving under like a pastoral assistant to someone who doesn't, gets on stage, tells the whole church, "I haven't lied for 20 years.
you're
I have no sin in my life.
like,
I don't." I mean, and you have to sit with the guy in staff meetings, and like, you're like, what?
well, what I was thinking the whole time listening to the video was, like, just the audacity of somebody to say that. Like,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
you either have, I don't know, I don't, like, you either got to be so oblivious, or in or you have, or just how much power you have, um to say something like that. Like, you're saying that to thousands of people.
yeah.
Somebody's got to know you. It, oh my goodness.
I mean,
uh,
my wife would let me get away with that. I wouldn't be able
yeah,
to.
yeah, the Todd White's wife is probably even more of a, like a conundrum, because it's like, the guy.
Yeah, right, right.
you know you know him better than anyone else. How can you say that all of this is true? So um just bizarre stuff. But props to Mike Winger for bringing all that
Yeah,
out. I just was on YouTube and I saw that he has another video out about, like, the reaction from Paula White and Bethel on the Sean Bowles thing, and gosh, I don't hours long videos. But if you are listening and you haven't, checked them out, Mike Winger's been really good lately. I mean, he's good in general, but he's been really good lately in calling out some major heretics.
I was introduced to Mike Winger when he did like a 30-hour long podcast on the question of the role of women in the church. And did you listen to that?
That's I was introduced to him there as well, but I wasn't about to watch a 12-hour long
It was
video.
amazing. I mean, I didn't do it in one sitting, of course.
Yeah, I
But
know. Yeah.
but it is pretty impressive. I mean, he was
Yep.
very, he's very. One thing I like about him is he's very fair. He doesn't like he didn't go into that thing with an agenda. He just went in to look at the passages and take the best arguments from both sides, and it was really good. Like if you're wrestling with that question, that I listened to Winger go through it, and you might not agree with him in the end, but it's gonna be hard. You're gonna be hard pressed to explain why you don't, because he's really thorough and excellent in his understanding of the arguments and his really fair. He doesn't straw man either side. He does a really good job.
Hmm.
So
I'll have to listen to it. Yeah, these are the first videos that I've actually listened to. I've known about him, but I haven't really listened. But well, shall we go to Matthew 16?
let's do it.
Let me read it for us. This is so Matthew 16, starting in verse 13. Now, when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter replied, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven." Then he strictly charged the disciples to tell no one that he was the Christ. All right, Matt, a lot to look at here. Jesus is at Caesarea Philippi, it says, which, if I understand, is like the northernmost part of uh, uh, Israel at that time, in Jesus' time. And it's here where he poses the question, who do people say that the Son of Man is? What do you make of these responses that they give? Because to me, these sound like very flattering opinions
Yeah,
of
yeah.
who Jesus is.
Some say John the Baptist. I mean, by this time, I believe John the Baptist has already been
Yeah, he
executed.
is.
So people to say some are saying he's John the Baptist means some are saying that John the Baptist is risen from the dead, and it's Jesus. That
Kind of a big deal.
Yeah, that would be a big. That's Herod's view, actually. Earlier
Yes.
in the gospel, that's what Herod believes. And then yeah, Elijah is the greatest prophet up to this point in in the whole history of of Israel. I guess you could say that John the Baptist is the greatest prophet since Jesus said that. But before John the Baptist shows up, Elijah is the guy. The greatest miracles, the most prolific uh, miracle worker and prophet out there. And so to say he's Elijah, yeah, it's hugely flattering. And then Jeremiah yeah, I think I might be wrong about this, but I think he had the longest prophetic ministry
Mm.
out of all of them. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But he was the prophet who came toward the end and prophesied the end of the kingdom of Judah and the 70 years, and reiterated Isaiah's prophecy of the exile, but set a specific time period for 70 years, and known as a weeping prophet. So yeah, all these are really, really flattering ideas. So it's very possible that the disciples thought, oh yeah, by telling Jesus this, we're pumping him up here.
What do you know if there was an expectation that Jeremiah would come back?
No, there was an area that not no, there was an expectation that Elijah would come back because remember he didn't die. He ascended. But the tradition is that Jeremiah died in Egypt with the escapees after the violent run-in they had in with Johanan. Our Johanan had with I forgot the name of the son, one of the royal household who killed the last governor that was set in place by Babylon. But anyway, that's don't want to get too caught up in that. But he died in Egypt. Um, so, but everyone also knows that John the Baptist died. So, is there some kind of is there some kind of idea that there's a prophets are going to rise toward the end and begin prophesying again? Maybe that's what's happening. I don't know.
Yeah, because then they say one of the prophets, which leads me to thinking about some specific prophets. I know that some say that maybe they were thinking Jeremiah because there's a kind of similarities in how Jesus spoke and how
Yeah,
Jeremiah spoke. It's the weeping prophet, and well, Jesus didn't have too many great things to say about Israel.
right, right,
Um,
right.
so who knows? But what would you say would maybe be some modern equivalents to these? Like if this question, well, this the question is asked of people today. Who do you say Jesus is? What are some things that people say today that are also flattering?
Like two preachers, you mean? Like they're like two religious figures?
Or anything like, well, I think Jesus was a really good man.
Oh yeah. I see what you're saying. Yes, yes. People, what do people say about Jesus that they think
Yes.
is flattering? Yeah, of course is the classic. He's a great teacher along the lines of a Buddha or Muhammad. Or they'll set him in the panoply of
Yeah.
great
He's like
religious
the
figures in
best,
the
the
past.
greatest prophet under Muhammad.
Yeah, yeah. Right. I think Baha'i does that. I think Baha'i has that religious tradition has all the prophets together as a single voice, and Jesus is prominent, but he's not, of course, the last one. But he's in the holy huddle. So so that's one thing. I mean, people will say, I really love Jesus's ethic, how he taught us to love one another, and he came along and taught peace and I that reminds me of myself. I'm like Jesus. That's the if more people could be like me and Jesus, then we would have a better world.
I agree. Or don't the Hindus will even say that they will they'll latch on to the idea that he's divine, but just he's like divine with all the other divine beings. So it's
Right,
like,
because everyone's divine, basically.
yeah, as flattering as you can go. It's just like, yeah, you're God with everybody else. Yeah, like all these other gods as well. Um, I think could be that the key here is that of course, uh, uh, well, it, your opinion of Jesus isn't what ultimately matters, and you can have a good opinion of Jesus, but the question is like, who is he actually? And that's what he gets to. And he said, okay, oh, this is what everybody says of me. But the underlying question is that true? You can think all you want about who Jesus is. You can think that he's, um, just a good man or maybe a prophet or your drinking buddy or whatever. But it always comes down to Jesus actually asking, you know, who am I, or who am I really? And he says that he gives that to the disciples. He says, "Who do you say that I am?" And he's not he's not saying, "Well, what's your opinion?" I guess he kind of is, but he's not saying, "Oh yeah, all those are really good opinions, and you people can hold those." What about you guys? What would you add to all of this?
We're having a
Um,
great conversation here. We're just gonna
yeah,
share
yeah,
opinions.
I love all of these ideas. This is really interesting. I wonder, and then, but no, he asks, and Peter, he pipes up and he says, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." Um, what What's he saying there? What does he mean when he says you're the Christ and then adding the Son of the living God? What's he confessing there?
The Christ is the Greek way of saying the Messiah, the Anointed One. So that's the long expected, prophesied Savior sent by God. But I think the majority of the people who were expecting the Christ were not expecting God to be the Christ. So it's a human title, uh, as most people used it at the time. And so Peter says, "You're the Christ," which is a pretty phenomenal confession. You're right. Jesus does kind of direct them back because they were giving their reports about what they've heard other people say, and Jesus says, "Now I want to know what you think," and that's the point. And it is interesting that no one says the name of Peter. Um, and then he follows up the "You are the Christ" with the Son of the living God. And it would be one thing if Peter had said, "You're a son of the living God. You're a child of God," or whatever. That wasn't too common back then, but it would have been within the realm of possible responses. Uh, Speaking of a human king, right? Because the kings of Israel were sometimes referred to as the sons of God, and not in a divine sense, but um, they were his representatives there for Judah and Israel. So to say you are the Son of God, that's a different thing altogether. That specifies a unique relationship with the Father, with God the Father, that that does indicate a oneness of essence. Um, that you what the Father had, what God has, you have. Um, to say you're the son of someone is to say that you share what that person has. Um, so, for example, when Jesus calls the Jews the son of the devil, not all Jews, but the Jews he's interacting with in John chapter 8, he calls them, "You're the sons of your father, the devil." He's saying that because they have that character. They are acting as he's acted. They're rebelling against him. So so here, um, to say that Jesus is the Son of God communicates something much higher than, yeah, you're a king, or even that you're the Christ. This is setting Jesus up on the level with the Father.
And the Jews would know this because in John chapter 5, after healing the man at the what is it, at the pool of Bethesda, um, everyone's angry at him for healing him on the Sabbath, and Jesus says in John
Yeah,
5:17, "My Father is working until now, and I am working."
yeah,
And then it says this was why the Jews were seeking all the more to kill him, because not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was even calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God.
right.
Is blasphemy to them. And so they understood that, as you were saying, that there can be many sons of God, like Israel, but there's not. But to say that you're the
The
unique
Son.
son, that is blasphemy to the Jews, because you are saying you're God. You're equal with God. But what do you make, Matt, of the contrast of the two types of sons here? You have the question that Jesus asks them at first. He doesn't say what you might think he says. He doesn't say, "Who do people say that I am?" He says, who do people say that the Son of Man is?" Referring, of course, to himself. And then so he's the Son of Man. He's also the Son of God. Can you explain those two things?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way Jesus uses that title, Son of Man, well, it can be used in two ways. In Ezekiel, Son of Man means human, like you're a human being. Um, but the way Jesus uses it, it goes back to Daniel chapter 7, verse 14, where where Daniel sees in the night visions one like the Son of Man being brought up on the clouds to the Ancient of Days, who's God, and then God giving the Son of Man dominion and power and authority and uh, worship from over all the nations, or from all the nations of the earth. So uh, we know that Jesus is using the Son of Man that in that way because when he's questioned in his trial um, by Caiaphas, and Caiaphas puts him under oath essentially and says, "Who, I charge you by the living God." I think he says, "Tell us who you are." And he says, "I tell you, are you the Christ, the Son of God?" And he says something along the lines of, I can try to quote from off the top of my head. Uh, you said it, and you will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven. He's going right back to that Daniel
Yep.
7. Um,
Yeah, very clear reference.
right.
them. Yeah. Yeah,
So
you're right.
both titles, Son of God and Son of Man, are divine
Yep.
titles.
And yet it's interesting to see it here in this context because um it one like a son of man, it's a there's divinity attached to it and yet also humanity.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
right? And so that's what's so fascinating here. Isn't that the one opinion of Christ that is unacceptable? Is that he's both man and God, fully man and fully God. That everything else, you could say whatever else you want about Jesus. He's a good man, good teacher, prophet, maybe even a divine kind of being. But to say that he is both fully man and fully Yahweh, um, that is that's too far. Can't go
Yeah.
that.
I would love to know how, and I always mean to research this. I never do, but how the rabbis and the Jewish interpreters understood Daniel 7, because you do have this one described in human terms, the Son of Man, but who is given um, uh, honor and glory and even worship that belongs only to God. So that duality is there in this Son of Man figure in Daniel. I don't know how the
Well, I just pulled up that text that you were referring to when he's being tried. It's in Matthew 26 at the end. And
yeah
after he says that, after he says what
they
said, then right after that, the high priest tears
yeah
his robes and says he's uttered blasphemy.
yeah.
So it makes you wonder, like, do they catch on to his reference and know what
I mean,
know?
I think they do. So that tells you they at least see it as a divine claim, or a kind of
Yeah,
a divine. But how do they deal with the human divine
yeah, yeah.
aspect of that title? So
Well, they've I mean, they're caught in the web of their own unbelief. I mean, uh, it's right there in front of them, and they just won't
yeah,
see. Which leads into the next section, actually, in Matthew 16, because Jesus, the only way that you can confess this about Jesus is if the Father reveals it to you. That's what he says. He says, "Blessed are you, Peter, because flesh and blood hasn't revealed this to you. My Father who's in heaven." Um, Matt, why is it that God has to reveal this to you? Why can't you come to the conclusion on your own?
well, it's not that the evidence isn't there. That's not the problem. It's the problem is, and we've talked about this before. The problem is the human heart. To recognize and see Christ as the true God and true man is an act of humility in which you have to humble yourself and set yourself down underneath Him as your Lord and King. which means that you're not your Lord and King. So, and that's not something that flesh and blood does. Flesh does not willingly submit itself to God, and recognize Him as God and honor Him in that way. That is the infection that has spread across the human race and infected every one of our natures. So if you right now can confess that Jesus is Lord and that He is Savior and He is both God and man, and that you personally must have Him save you or else you will not be saved, then that's something the Holy Spirit has revealed to you. That's not something that you came up with because you're smart. And we know, I mean, look at Peter. I mean, Peter's like, of all, of all the people to come to this conclusion, you know, of all the great theologians of the day you might have named or thought of might do this, or the wonderful priests or rabbi. No, it's Peter.
Yeah.
So this is how you know that flesh and blood doesn't come up with it.
This is like the one of the few bright moments in Peter's whole
Yeah.
time with Jesus. Like, it's like, wow, Peter, that's incredible. How, like, it's amazing that you said that. You haven't said anything this profound up to now, and you won't say anything profound after.
Well, right after this, right after this, he gets called Satan, basically. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, it's funny. He, I, it almost, as you read it, it's kind of like he takes the next thing that Jesus says about the rock. It's almost like he takes that and he kind of internalizes it. He's like, oh yeah, you know,
hey, I'm
even though, yeah, I know Jesus said that I didn't come up with this by myself, that the Father revealed it to me, but
kind of awesome.
so let me rebuke the Christ, the Son of the living God, for a minute. um, so, so Jesus continues in verse 18. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Um, all right, there you have it. Um, what does it mean for what is Jesus saying here? Is Peter the rock that the church is built on? If so, what would that even mean? Um, this is, we Protestants differ with Rome on at least the application of this. How do you take this, Matt? What's
Well,
Jesus?
there's a lot of debate about it, of course, even among Protestants, is about with regard to what it.
Well, we're about to put it to rest.
Yeah, yeah. So, so the so Jesus uses two words here. One, he renames Simon Petros, Peter, which means stone, rock, stone. And you see this throughout the scriptures. It's interesting that he does this because the one who usually renames people is God, and it's interesting that he does it after he's been declared or identified as God by Peter. He says, "Well, now you're you are the
Yeah,
rock," and it's um like it's like God calling Jacob Israel, or Abram Abraham, Sarai Sarah. This is a this is a divine renaming, and it does say something about what God will do, Jesus will do through Peter in the future. I mean, and when you read the Book of Acts, uh, he's the one who preaches the first sermon on Pentecost Day. He's the one who leads the missionary endeavors of the church up until at least Acts 15. So he's primary um, among the apostles. He is the rock in that sense, um, of those first years after Jesus' ascension into heaven. Uh, but now the next word, so he says, "You are the Petros," and upon this, Petra, and that's a feminine word, and there's argument here. So it some have said that doesn't refer so much to a stone; it refers more to a ledge or to a cliff, to a kind of a mountainous drop off. It's a different word, a different thing that's being referred to than Petros, which is stone. And so those who argue for that say, well, this Petra is referring not to Peter himself, but to what he said, this confession that, uh, or to the revelation that God gives, this revelation of who Jesus is, which was followed by Peter's confession, that's the rock on which the the whole church is founded. This confession that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God. Others say, well, yes, the word does have a little bit of a different tinge to it. It's in the feminine, not in the masculine. But it, it it's you're paying you're it seems to be the meaning is that Peter is the rock upon which he'll build the church, and Protestants even say that. Um, what they'll add though very quickly is that there's nothing here about succession or uh, the notion that the office of Peter will continue in perpetuity until the coming of Christ.
Right.
There's just that God is, or Jesus is singling out Peter for his singular role, his unique role as leader in those first few uh, uh, decades or decade of the church.
Yeah, I think that's a good distinction there. Even if you take Peter as specifically being the rock, there's nothing here that then would suggest that there is, I guess, like a special office that Peter holds outside of all the other the offices that Christ sets up, and that there would in that because he was in Rome, that makes now Rome the rock, right? So it's like uh, even if you take it that way, it's not necessary from this text to apply it or to imply everything else that Rome implies from it. The question being, what does it mean for Christ to build his church on this rock? How exactly does Christ build his church? Because there's there's a foundation. What's the foundation that holds the building? Right, of Christ's people. And it would seem like, um, though, it would seem like there's this play on words with Petros and Petra, and that in one sense, yes, it's Peter, because Peter will preach the gospel and he's going to lead the way. We know that from Ephesians, Paul says, the church is built on the foundation of the apostles and the prophets. So it's from the teaching of Peter and from the apostles and the prophets. Um, and so then what that would suggest is the actual rock or the rockness of Peter is the confession, is the message itself. Am I off there? Or
No, I mean, I think where I come down on this is I tend to think it's a both and kind of thing.
Mhm.
Um, so yes, Peter takes the lead, and Jesus builds his church through at first the ministry of Peter. That's literally what happens at Pentecost in Acts chapter 2, that Peter preaches, and people come in uh, because of the grace and power of Jesus through Peter's preaching. Um, and yet, what does he preach? He preaches that that Jesus is the Christ, and the Son of God who's risen from the dead. And so there's a both and there, isn't there? It's both Peter and the message that he preaches. And so when Peter falls away, the message doesn't. It's still there. The message that he provides remains, and that goes on um, as the foundation and basis uh, upon which Jesus continues to build his church.
right, the rock of his confession that we still
Right.
confess, right? And he said it first,
Right. Right.
and now
Right.
we say it.
I mean,
Right.
there's kind of it's interesting, like so you have Peter being there at Pentecost, preaching there first. You have Peter being the first one to go to the Gentiles, um, Cornelius. He's the one who opens the door, I guess you could say, to the Gentile ministry, even though Paul's the one who carries it forward. Uh, he goes to the centurion Cornelius and he preaches the gospel there. And upon that preaching, these Gentiles come in and Jesus builds Gentiles into his church. Peter and John go, and they're the ones who seal the deal that Philip began in Samaria. So Peter seems to be this kind of key figure in the spread of the church from Jew to Gentile to Samaritan. And then the last witness we have of him historically in Acts is at the council where he seems to be passing on leadership to James, actually, in that council in Acts 15. And he lends his witness in support of Paul and his ministry to the Gentiles, and then he kind of recedes into the background. So you can have a case, I think, where Peter is the rock, and Jesus builds his church through him, and yet also the message is the rock on which Jesus builds his church.
Yeah, that continues. What's it mean? What's this whole gates of hell can't prevail against it?
That's interesting. Yeah. So I always conceived of that as like the hell's gates opening and the forces of Satan assaulting the gates of the church. But that's not the image. It's the image is the gates of hell, and we're attacking the gates of hell, right?
Yeah.
And so, and I forgot who pointed this out to me. Was it Peter Leithart? I think was listening to. But the idea is, oh no, we're not the ones under siege. Satan is the one under siege, and his gates will not prevail. Ultimately, Jesus will batter them down through his church and destroy them. The church is the army that Christ is going to use to batter down all the walls and the gates of hell and destroy it. Which is I like that image better than the.
Oh yeah, that's way better. Yeah, it's way better. And then, am I wrong in pointing out that verse 19 shows us how exactly we prevail against it? Because you have gates here, this image of gates, and then the next image is of keys. Now it says the keys of the kingdom of heaven, right? Something it doesn't say the keys of the gates of hell, but I just can't help but think, might there be some connection here? You have the gates of hell that don't prevail against it, and then you have the keys. You have certain keys of the kingdom of heaven. What's going on here? Does it connect at all to the gates of hell and how we prevail against it, or is it separate? How do we work through that?
That's interesting. I had not. It's so clear. There's gates. They're barred, and you have keys. The next passage. I should have noted that. But okay. So the one thing that you should notice here, though, is that the keys that are given to Peter are also given to the other apostles. And that happens in Matthew 18.
Yeah.
Like after Jesus tells people, "Hey, if you have a problem with somebody, go face to face." He then follows that up with, after the church is told about it, and you have to put the person out of the church who's being disciplined. Then he says, "Well, to you, my apostles, I give the keys of the kingdom of heaven. What you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. What you loose on earth will be loose in heaven." So that in that context is very clearly that when the church is acting in accordance with the instructions that Christ gives her for discipline, that its decisions are decisions that are confirmed and ratified by heaven. So the keys there seem to be, in one sense, you can bar a person out in the Matthew 18 context. I think they would also want to say that to the extent that in this context, as we've already said, to the extent that the feminine Petra is the confession that Peter gave, or the revelation that led to that confession, that would be the key that
Yeah.
would batter down the gates of hell.
Yeah, yeah, right. It would let, it either yeah, it kind of, it's interesting. It's almost like it either, uh, binds the hearer, um, in hell if they're still there because they don't believe, or frees them,
Right.
um, from hell if they believe. But it's through the preaching of the gospel,
Yeah.
the true gospel of who Jesus is, that either binds or looses. And then the church has that authority, once someone responds either negatively or positively, that we can with confidence say, that they are either, forgiven or
Yeah.
still in their sins.
This is why you can stand up on a Sunday morning with confidence and say after the confession that you who have repented of your sins, you are forgiven. You are pardoned. Your sins have been put away. And that proclamation, you're exercising the power of the keys. It's not that you personally are forgiving anyone's sins, but you are applying the power of the keys that Christ has given to the church in that particular moment on Sunday morning.
That's a hurdle that a lot of people have in a more liturgical church, in the Lutheran tradition, the Anglican tradition. I don't know if, Presbyterians do it, a kind of absolute. Do
I
they?
think they do in a lesser. Yeah, they do. I think so.
Okay. But that's a helpful distinction, that it's, absolution in the Protestant, understanding of it is not of doing the forgiving, but is of, confirming Christ's forgiveness, to the sinner who has repented. So it is saying, "Hey, have you repented? Oh, yes? Okay. Then with all the authority of heaven,
Right.
I say to you, you are forgiven."
Right. Right.
Um, and that's really helpful for us sinners to hear. I like how, our prayer book, the 2019, has the rite of reconciliation, the Anglican kind of confessional. It's not, again, it's not like Rome. It's not, you don't have to do it, and it's not a sacrament, and it's, again, it's not, the priest actually forgiving you. It's Christ forgiving you, but through the priest giving you, comfort and, confirmation of that fact. And that really does something when you hear that said to you. I've talked with guys before. This was really helpful for my own life. That if they're ever struggling with some besetting sin, and ask, what they should do, I I now, my first thing is, of course, reading the Bible is important, but I tell them, well, go to church every Sunday, um, hear the sermon, confess your sins, and really listen to that absolution,
Yeah.
and and then take communion,
And
because
believe it.
these things, and believe it, yeah, and yeah, like listen to that absolution and believe, that this is, that when the priest is saying that, have you repented? Then Christ is saying that to you, and he'll comfort you in that. I think I've experienced that personally. I do every Sunday, and, so yeah, that's helpful.
It's also, the place that the church holds in this is pivotal. I mean, but the church is so much more important in what Jesus is saying here than the way I think most, at least American evangelical Christians, understand it to be.
Yep.
Like, I think in most, when I don't want to speak too generally, I don't want to generalize too broadly, but for many, the church is a place where you go to maybe be helped, maybe not. You kind of go because you feel an obligation to go, but you really, if it's not that entertaining, it's not that big of a deal, because your real pastor is Jesus, and your real, why do you need the church? But that's, man, take that assumption about what the church is and line it up against what Jesus is saying here about what the church is,
Yeah.
uh, and it doesn't match it. You have no idea. If that's what you think the church is, it's a place to maybe go on Sunday to be entertained or to be or to have a good music or whatever it might be,
Oh,
man, you've lost
no, the church is
the plot.
freeing people from the gates of hell and
Right.
finding them if they don't respond. And and you know what? Freeing you once again from your guilt and shame that you have during the week because of your sinfulness. You go and Christ is working there, and is freeing you of that once again.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's yeah, you're right. I hadn't thought about that, but that's a good point.
And just to make this more local, because I mean, another kind of escape route from this might be, oh yes, well of course, I believe that the universal church is something that is the invisible church is definitely does all that, but not my local congregation. No, I mean,
What's your how does the universal church do it then?
yeah, I mean, you go. There's not a single letter in the New Testament, not an epistle written to the universal church. It's written to churches, individual congregations or groups of congregations, but there's not like a, a, a letter to all the entire invisible. There's no church. There's no letter to the invisible church. It applies to everybody, all believers. Every church, every letter does apply to all believers, and so in that sense, it applies to the invisible church. But it's to visible, gathered congregations because the apostles understood what Jesus meant here
Mhm.
by the church being the 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 means by which Jesus saves souls and crushes Satan. Um, but we forget that. So
Yeah. Well, and we do something very impractical to the world. That is, all of this is revolving around a confession that that Peter made,
yeah,
a confession of who Jesus is. So why do we gather together? Well, we literally we gather together every week to hear this once again, to believe in it, to receive the truth of the gospel. Like that's what we're doing. We're listening to a sermon. We're listening. We're praying. We're saying the confession ourselves, and Christ is building His church by that. That's what He is doing. So yeah, you can say that you feel close to God when you are outside or alone reading a book, a devotional book. Or, okay, that's great. I mean, I'm not knocking that at all, but um, that's not how Christ builds His church. That doesn't. The gates of hell do prevail against that, but they can't prevail against the church gathered, preaching the word, confessing who Christ is. It can't. It just can't. It can't stop
well,
that.
and if you, I mean, honestly, I mean, I agree. I totally agree with you that. Yeah, I love the forest. I love hiking. I love backpacking. I love being out in nature. That's beautiful. I find myself having wonderful times with God when I'm out there. But at the same time, if I for a minute begin to think that I'm closer to God next to a brook than I am when I'm in the presence of another person who's filled with the Holy Spirit, who is made in God's image, then I don't know my Bible very well.
No, no,
When you're gathered together with the whole community of Christ, bound by the Holy Spirit, made one by the sacrament and the Word, you can't on earth you cannot go get closer to God than that.
no. You can't. You're right. And the New Testament says that we're the temple of God, which means
Right,
that's where God is. Like,
right, right.
so when the church gathers, um, the uh, God, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit is right there in a very unique way, that he's not in other places. Just like in the Old Testament with the temple. So no, you're right. And yeah, I mean, it is. I don't know. It is something that people today don't really get. And I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just when you go, it doesn't feel special. I don't know.
Well, I do think that's part of it because a big part of it because I think we have been taught that our feelings are so important. It's how you feel that determines what truth and falsehood is. So if you don't feel something on a Sunday morning, you feel then you come away thinking I didn't have an experience of God today. I didn't God you know, we haven't had the Spirit arrive and show up, because I personally didn't have a mountaintop experience. And when you begin doing that, I mean, when you begin to like gauge your relationship with God, or your understanding of God's work in the world based on whether or not you have a feeling of it, you're going to be chasing your emotions around. You're going to be looking for, you're trying as hard as you can to get into this kind of state of ecstasy that might be brought about by music or by, listen to CCM, whatever it might be. You got to have that kind of buzz
Hmm.
to feel that you have
Yeah.
God. And you what you're doing is you're prioritizing your emotions, whereas you're not just emotions. Your mind, you are your emotions are part of you, yes. Your will, your emotions, your mind, your body. You're a complex being. And so God God speaking to you through his word on a Sunday morning is you are experiencing him in your mind and in your ears. He's speaking directly to you. Whether you feel it or not does not matter. It's an objective thing. He is objectively speaking to you in the reading of the word and the preaching of the word. You are objectively, if you believe in Jesus, you're not in open defiant rebellion. You are objectively feeding on Jesus's body and blood in your body and soul when you take communion, whether you feel it or not. It doesn't matter whether you feel it or not. It's actually happening. So you eat a good meal, whether you enjoyed eating your Brussels sprouts or not. I don't care. They're good for you, and they and they actually may have an effect in your body in the same way the Lord's Supper has an effect on your soul. And so there's an objective promise that we believe when we come to church and gather with the saints, promises with regard to the sacrament and with regard to the word, that that does not depend. Those promises do not depend on how you feel at a given Sunday. And what that should do is relieve you of the burden of having to feel a certain way.
Yeah.
Um, so that you can go to church and maybe God will be, maybe you'll be on crowd night. Maybe you won't, but it doesn't matter. You will have been with God, and
Yeah.
he will have been with you.
That's a common, and this is the last thing I'll say on this, but that's a common critique of liturgy, is that uh, you are kind of putting the Spirit in a box, right? By just saying, well, this is what we're going to say, and this is what the service is going to look like. I have problems with that assumption, with what's assumed about the Spirit in that. I mean, in the first place, but it also it's actually just not true. That it's like the liturgy is chains, like you're chained
Yeah,
to one way of doing it. The liturgy is actually, if you do it, and you do it in good faith, and it won't take long for you to realize that actually it's very freeing, um, because your mind is outside of yourself. You're not going to church trying to figure out what to say or what to feel, how you should be responding. You're given all of that to you, and it says, hey, here's where you listen, here's what you say, and here's how you respond. And then you go home and you realize after that, you're like, oh, that was really helpful. It's kind of like I was created to have some kind of order uh,
yeah,
on me. Um,
yeah, yeah.
um, um, but uh, but yeah, it's very helpful. Um, and I that's a great place to stop. But I do want actually to just a couple more minutes, if I could keep you, Matt,
Sure.
um, because we've said all of this. Uh, Matthew 16 here in this text, you know, it's revolved around a confession and Christ building his church on that confession. So you'd think, okay, go now and preach it, right? Which will happen. in verse 20, Jesus says, then he strictly charged the disciples to tell no one that he was the Christ. I just can't help but laugh every time I read that, because it's like, what are you talking about? You just said the gates of hell aren't going to prevail against this confession. What are you talking about? Why are you keeping them from saying it? Why does Jesus say that now?
It's interesting. It's more pronounced. This secrecy is more pronounced in Mark than in Matthew, but Matthew does carry it as well. And it's interesting in Mark, and I'm going to Mark because I think Mark gives us the answer to that question. Um, so in Mark, there's a turning point, and that turning point comes just before Peter's confession, or maybe it's just after. But it's that point where Jesus lays hands on the blind man, and he 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 rubs. I can't remember if he rubs mud on him or whatever, but as his eyes. But he opens his eyes and he sees, but he doesn't see clearly.
He spits on them.
Yeah. He doesn't see clearly after that. I see trees walking around, and so Jesus does it again, right? And then he sees clearly, right? That is that really happened historically, but that is also the program for Mark's gospel. Because when Peter here confesses that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, it's like he sees, but he sees like in a fuzzy way, the trees walking around. The reason it's fuzzy is because there's a cultural expectation about what the Christ is supposed to do. And we know that Peter sees it in a fuzzy way because when they come to arrest Jesus, Peter pulls out a sword and whops off Malchus's ear, right? So he doesn't get what he said. He said it truly, rightly. The Holy Spirit's given him that, but he does not understand the fullness of what he's just confessed. And so Jesus does not want them to go around and say, "Hey, here's the Christ," because he knows that that's going to mean for people, "Oh, look, let's get an army, sharpen our swords, let's go cut off people's heads and install this Jesus as our Messiah in Jerusalem." And so he says, "Don't tell anyone because you guys don't get it yet. You guys are not."
Yeah.
And as evidence of that is what Peter goes on to say, right? Because Jesus says, "I'm going to go be crucified first." And people say, "No, you're not. Are you insane? No, that's not what you're supposed to be doing."
I just said,
Yeah.
the Son of the living God. What do you mean you're going to go die? You're right. Yeah. So he's got to die. He's got to be crucified, rise again, ascend into heaven, and
Then
you can go out.
Mark's gospel culminates with the centurion at the foot of the cross, seeing Jesus die, and then saying, "Surely this was the Son of God." So that's the climax right there. At the cross is when Jesus's sonship, his Christ, his messiahship is fully and completely revealed.
Yeah. Which, I mean, that's the whole reason he came. That's the whole reason he's man and God. It's so that he go to the cross and die for sins, so that this can actually take place. So that the gates of hell there should prevail against it, so that people can be free from sin. All of that. It only happens if Christ is both man and God, and he goes to the cross. And so that's where he's headed. That's why he's here. Well, thank you, Matt. Very helpful talking to you through this stuff. I hope that it was helpful for everyone listening now. For those who are listening, thanks for joining us. And for those who are listening in the future, thank you for tuning in. And Lord willing, we'll see you next week. Have a great week. Matt, good to see you, man.
You too.
Take care.